Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everybody into Garden of Doom, and this week we are venturing back into the final frontier. For those of you who didn't listen to the first episode of Star Trek, I recommend that you do, unless you're a full Trekkie. But even then, you may want to listen to the first one. In fact, I think it was called Final Frontier. I think it came out in November. It was published then, so if you're looking for it, check it out. Our guests are the same, our panel. It is Elle and Brian, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you folks a little bit about them.
Hey, everybody. My name is Elizabeth, or Elle McDowell, and I am a friend of Jeff's from real life. I am a Trekkie, but I also host a podcast with my friend Laura called Murder, She Woke. It's about Murder, She Wrote. We kind of put a legal and social spin on the beloved classic from the 80s. And other than that, I take up space and time, and I have a cat.
Okay.
All right. Well, my name is Brian Moss. Elizabeth and I know each other as fans of another Star Trek podcast from elsewhere. I've been taking up a lot of space. No, I have a macaron business called The Obsessive Macaronist. I've been working on that for about a year. I work for a big, large, mean, awful bank, and I have a great boyfriend of almost 8 years. That's me.
Pretty sure I take up more space than both of you, but in fairness, I barely go anyplace. So maybe that equals things out. All right, so they're going to go into Star Trek 201, and this is going to be mostly them speaking, because this is really probably beyond where I can give a little bit of input, but we'll see. You know, I've seen the movies and some other stuff, so we'll see just how good or bad of a, casual Trekkie I am. But before we get into that, I need to talk to the audience just a bit. So, for a long time, I've been talking about this Moon episode that I'm going to do. And, yeah, one day I'm probably still going to do it. And as you know, all of my information on it is in a novel that's in one of many boxes of books in my garage, which, it would take a angry clan of cave bears to get me to go down there voluntarily and go through it. Yes, if you're saying, Jeff, you could just go on YouTube and probably find everything you need right there. You bet I can. You bet I won't. But the good news for everyone is that I saw this documentary done by famed docujournalist Roland Emmerich. That you may remember from documentaries like Independence Day and Independence Day 2, who did a movie called Moonfall. And they covered like at least 2/3 of the stuff. So is the movie good? No. Is it popcorn deliciously awful? Yes. Is it exactly what I thought it was going to be? Exactly what I wanted? Yes. But I can't tell you it's a good movie, but I love most every second of it. I mean, even the bad acting parts. By the way, I don't know what Patrick Wilson is doing, but the guy's all buffed out. So good for him. I think that's his name, the dude from the Conjuring movies. But here's a little bit about Moonfall. So they take this whole thing. First of all, the things about the moon, how it's an artificial megastructure that was put here by aliens. So like the moon is like exactly 400 times smaller than the Earth or something like that. And the Earth is exactly 400 times smaller than the sun. And that's the only way eclipses could happen. And the chances of that are astronomical. Now, of course, we're talking about the cosmos, which is astronomy. So, I mean, of course, astronomical fits in. But nevertheless, there's always been those missing 2 minutes from the Apollo missions and things like that. And there's always been sort of rumors that Neil Armstrong saw a beacon, and then Neil Armstrong all of a sudden went to some mission to the Andes, even though he's not a geologist or an anthropologist or whatever. And everyone's kept quiet. So there's all these stories about the moon, not faking the moon landing, but when they went there, they found something they weren't expecting, and they've kept quiet since then. And that's why we haven't gone back, even though, we have gone back. And when I say we, I mean, other countries too. Anyway, it's wonderful. It's delicious. The moon is a giant superstructure egg with a gyroscope stabilizing it, powered by a dwarf white star. And there are 2 extraterrestrial intelligences sort of battling there. But it's not like the reptilians and the Greys or the Anunnaki and the Watchers or anything like that. Turns out that, yes, panspermia is real. We are the aliens. The aliens are us. Our ancestors are them. They seeded us. And this moon was the only successful one to escape their own artificial intelligence that one day achieves sentience, the singularity, iRobot, Terminator, you name it. It went full Ultron on them. Not that half-ass, lazy, underachiever Thanos. Full Ultron. Destroyed all of them. Got to all of their arcs, which these moons are, their planet, everything, except for this one moon got away. But one of them, one of these AIs, found the moon and was trying to siphon off the energy from the dwarf star. So because of that, the moon is falling out of orbit and will, of course, destroy the Earth. So in true Armageddon style, a bunch of a riffraff group of a disgraced astronaut, his former best friend, who is now the accidental director of NASA, and Sam Tarly from Game of Thrones, who is a fake astrophysicist who did actually discover the moon was falling out of orbit before everyone else, and is like a YouTuber, go to save the Earth. And just like we learned in Babylon 5, he becomes the man in the machine, or at least his consciousness does. So spoilers, sorry about that. But nobody's seen this movie, and none of you are going to see it anyway, so don't worry. And if you didn't see Babylon 5, you don't even know what I'm talking about. And it was a Minbari there anyway, at least the second one. By the way, you two, I think when last we met, didn't we talk about that you were going to see Babylon 5 and Battlestar Galactica and The Expanse? Have either of you done your homework?
Negative.
Also negative.
I figured.
I am literally planning a cross-country move right now, so that is kind of what's taking precedence.
See,
there are too many boxes.
Elle is my friend in real life, but this is the first time I'm hearing it, but I'm not going to burden you with the what the fuck conversation.
I told you I announced it on Facebook. I'm moving to Portland next month.
Well, maybe you're out of my algorithm. I don't know. Maybe you don't like enough of my stuff. I don't know. I didn't know, but...
Okay, well, I'm moving to Portland next month.
Right,
yay!
Cool. Well, I know you love Portland, and even though we're friends in real life, I've seen you once in 5 years, so it's like oh, Portland, what's the difference? So all my friends are cyber friends, and in some ways that's perfect. Brian, are you also planning a giant move? Any life changes? Anything we should know about?
I am not. I'm staying where I am. I really haven't had the time or the mental energy to watch much more than Golden Girls reruns here lately. So that's where my head's been at.
Wow. Well, that's yours and Elle's next podcast adventure. I'm sure once she runs out of roads for Murder, She Woke, Golden Girls has to be next on her list. Though I would like you to do. I'd really like you to do.
If we're going, it'll be 10 years from now, so stay tuned.
Well, I did subscribe, and I have noticed there's been not a lot of things falling in my feed. I was really hoping that you would do like a Murder, She Wrote versus Heart to Heart sort of compare and contrast. Because all I know is that if I walk into a cocktail party and either of those sets are there, I'm turning around and getting the fuck out.
Ooh, I would listen to that. Maybe throw a little Hardcastle and McCormick in there. You got a deal.
Yeah, but at least Hardcastle and McCormick were like private detectives. Like the Harts were just socialites, and Angela was just like a writer who was trying to retire in this sleepy town. But wherever they go, somebody died. It's like Yellowstone. It's like 27,000 people in Montana, and at least 17 times that number have been murdered during the course of this show. So, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. I just want to say that people have the wrong conception about Murder, She Wrote because they think all the murders take place in Cabot Cove. They do not. She travels the world, and people get murdered everywhere she goes. So it's not just Cabot Cove; it is the entire world. So she's
not just an epidemic; she's a pandemic.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Now thank you. I stand corrected. 35 years of confusion has been rectified right now. All right. And the audience is going, what does any of this have to do with Star Trek? Nothing. We're getting into that right now. Enough of the nonsense. We can talk offline about nonsense.
Except
yes.
It has plenty to do with Star Trek because they were airing at the same time as The Next Generation, and there was a lot of crossover with guest stars. I know that Catherine Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, she was on Murder, She Wrote a couple times. And I know that there were a bunch of others that are escaping me, but my co-host makes fun of me because Diana Muldaur, Dr. Pulaski, she was on an episode in season 1. And my co-host makes fun of me because all I ever do is point out Star Trek people.
What about Gowron? Was Gowron ever on?
I don't think so, but I can look at his IMDb and get back to you.
Okay, that's good. All right, well, we learned last time that the Kardashians are not the same as they're not Carpathians either, but whoever the ridged top devious guys were.
The lizard space Nazis?
Yes, the lizard space Nazis. What were they called? What was their race in Deep Space Nine?
Cardassians.
So the Cardassians are not the Kardashians. So that yet, right? We can debate which one is getting closer to the other soon enough. So anyway, I'm going to let my panel take us to Star Trek 201. They have prepared the syllabus. I didn't even ask them to share it with me because I'm not sure I can add. So take it. I'm not sure if you've organized who's going to start first, but I will go with ladies first and Elle, unless that's not the order you guys have chosen.
Well, this is less of a informational session and more of a conversation because Brian and I tried to rehearse an outline and keep it within a certain time period. We managed to get the time about right, but in terms of you can't just follow a syllabus with this because everything is connected. And so the big thing that kind of started off a conversation that we had the other day was, why do you watch Star Trek? And that was a question that I posed to Brian, and he had a really good answer for that. And I'd really like him to share because it kind of starts us off where we'd like to go today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the reason that we really settled on as far as why we like Star Trek is because the characters are relatable. We want to see so much of ourselves in the characters on the show, and the characters just feel aspirational. And just watching them develop from beginning to end on the series and just go through an entire arc not to mention just the fact that, you have people from all different backgrounds and walks of life. They learn to work together to solve scientific and diplomatic problems together in a completely different universe. And I guess that's the fascinating part to me. I mean, people nerd out over ships and the engineering and the scientific aspect, and that's all fine. If that's what you enjoy, great. But as for us, we just enjoy watching characters develop and interact with each other. And I think the relationships that develop are absolutely fascinating. And I think that's a huge reason why I follow the show.
And there's a little bit of a difference between the initial run, the first 3-season run of TOS is what we refer to it as, the original series, because first of all, it was the first thing, everything was new. They didn't have any template to go on. Second of all, it only ran for 3 seasons, so there wasn't enough time to build relationships, and some of that was rectified in the movies. But if you're just watching the original series, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not actually seeing the whole Star Trek universe. And I know that you, meaning Brian, have more of an insight into how the dynamics work on TOS, whereas I'm an X-Gen girl.
Right.
And then, because you had mentioned that there's like the big 3 on the ship. There's obviously Captain Kirk, there's Mr. Spock, the science officer, and then there's Dr. Bones McCoy, who, goddammit, Jim, I'm not a doctor. Or I'm a doctor, not a this, or I'm a doctor, not a butcher, or whatever. Right. So I think you had a really good take on that, and I'd really like everyone to hear it.
Well, basically, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, every episode basically features them to one degree or another, and it's all about the interpersonal relationships those 3 have. And really, the way to look at them is id, ego, and superego. Like, Kirk is all id. Kirk is sex on a stick. Kirk fires first and thinks later. Dr. McCoy is all ego. He's just very, very set in his ways. He is confident in his own abilities as a doctor. If he can't fix it, then you're screwed. And then Spock is the super ego, kind of the balancing between the id and the ego that kind of helps cross those bridges. And not to belabor the metaphor too much, but he's just the balance between Kirk and McCoy's personalities, while he's still trying to struggle and finding his own footing, serving among humans, being half human himself, and kind of learning how to manage his own emotional responses. So yeah, looking at it as id, ego, and superego is just really a good way to look at that whole trifecta of characters. And that's really what plays out over the first 3 seasons of the show.
And also, Star Trek was revolutionary for a lot of reasons, and one of the big ones is the diversity in casting. Mm-hmm. You have, of course, Nichelle Nichols as Lieutenant Uhura, and you have George Takei as Sulu, and then you have Walter Koenig as Chekhov. And at the time, in the 60s, having a black woman, a Russian, and a Japanese person on the bridge officers front and center, they didn't do a whole lot. But, I mean, representation matters, even if it's done maybe a little ham-handedly, which I thought, and we had talked about, was a little of, like, what happened. It's like, okay, let's put these people on the bridge. Everyone can see them, but they don't really do anything.
Right.
One of them gets the odd episode here and there, or they get to interact with one of the 3 main characters, but that's it. So it was kind of like A for effort. Like, execution was kind of a C+. So that's just how I see it.
No respect.
Yeah, they weren't fully realized characters.
No respect for the Scotsman?
So we were going to talk about Scotty is just like kind of the fourth guy. Like he hangs out in the engine room, and every once in a while he'll shout about an emergency, but he doesn't get that much. He doesn't get nearly as much time as Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Because he's a liar. Because he's a liar. He's always like, what? He's a liar. He's like, Scotty, I need you to fix this. I need 17 hours to do it. I need you to do it in 2. Okay.
Okay, Jeff, you and I are both attorneys.
Uh-huh.
So we both know that we like to give a range of space to do things so that people don't get don't start. Basically, we always give padding with time.
Mm-hmm. So Scotty was a secret lawyer.
No, he just knew that if he couldn't commit to a time frame and that he needed padding to make sure that in case there were any, things that came up, any complications, that he'd have time to cover himself.
Okay.
That's my thought.
He was a terrible negotiator also.
Geordi LaForge does that on TNG as well.
Okay.
He'll say, I need 2 hours, and Captain Picard will say, you have 30 minutes.
This is why I love B'Elanna Torres on Voyager, because she actually outright told Janeway, if I say 2 weeks, I need 2 weeks. I'm not lying. That's just how life is.
And it's interesting because I don't know. I mean, I know going through Starfleet Academy and you have to learn certain things, but I always wonder, like, how the captains are actually tuned in to what the technical requirements of something is. Like, do they have any basis for saying, no, actually, I think you can do it in 30, or is it just, you're about to get swallowed by an anomaly in space, so that's all you have? Because that's just something that I don't think there's an answer for, but it just kind of always kind of stuck in my craw a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I guess the downside of the characterizations in the original Trek series is that you never really saw relationships evolve over time past Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Like, you didn't get to see what, like a healthy marriage looked like in space, or what dating looks like in space over time. You saw a lot of unrequited love. You saw, like, Nurse Chapel, for example, holding a candle for Spock for 3 seasons and just kind of mindlessly flirting with him. And there was the occasional episode, I think it was Amok Time, where he hurled soup at her. I think Naked Time also was another one where she was just, it was so pathetic, actually, but the way she was just kind of like pining over him and he kept brushing her away. It's like this whole reverse Pepe Le Pew situation, which is kind of gross. Spock and Uhura had some like mild flirtation in an early episode, and then he'd play this little Vulcan guitar in the rec room, and she'd sing along and stuff like that. But nothing really ever came of that until the 2009 Star Trek movie, and then they actually got brave enough to put Spock and Uhura together as a couple. But aside from that, I mean, you don't really get to see like interpersonal relationships evolve in Trek. Now, I will say that there was a great big /fiction moment between Kirk and Spock after the series aired, the original series aired. So you'd see a lot of like weird homoerotic stuff, coming out about Kirk and Spock and stuff like that. But it never actually went anywhere. One thing I did want to bring up, Gene Roddenberry actually wrote the novelization for Star Trek The Motion Picture. If you haven't read this is freaking wild. I highly recommend it because it stays true to the movie, but also there's just some weird shit happening in this book. There's a footnote that actually addresses this, and I wanted to read from this. I was never aware of this lover's rumor, although I have been told that Spock encountered it several times. Apparently, he had always dismissed it with his characteristic lifting of his right eyebrow, which usually connoted some combination of surprise, disbelief, and or annoyance. As for myself, although I have no moral or other objections to physical love in any of its many earthly, alien, and mixed forms, I have always found my best gratification in that creature woman. Also, I would dislike being thought of as so foolish that I would select a love partner who only came into sexual heat once every 7 years. So in other words, he's just too horny to date a Vulcan. He needs something available constantly. So
makes sense.
Yeah, interpersonal relationships you just really don't see develop unless you're reading fan fiction.
Well, the Next Generation definitely fixed that.
Yes, and that. First of all, Next Generation was what got me into Star Trek, and I actually watched it for the first time when I was in my late 20s. I'm in my mid 30s now, so fun story actually. Over the Christmas holiday, my sister came in from Oregon, so we were all together at my parents' house, and we often have a very hard time deciding on something to watch together just because our tastes and our, threshold for certain things are very different. But I put on TNG, and my mom and my sister just immediately fell in love with it, and now my sister's watching it with her boyfriend and making him watch it. He doesn't get it, but she adores it. So just putting that out there. But the thing about TNG is this is the first real opportunity where we see like a 7-year arc essentially, because it's theoretically 7 seasons. Not only do you see changes in facial hair a la Beards, but you also see, and we had talked about this, and Brian, you can jump in whenever you want. There are just so many, like we could talk about the relationships on TNG for like 10, 15 hours. But I wanted to start off by talking about the most interesting character that I found. So my favorite character, full disclosure, in all of Trek is Data. And he's an interesting study, but I think the most complex character, or one of the most complex characters, is actually Worf. So Worf, for those of you who don't know, is a Klingon. He is, I think, the only Klingon in Starfleet.
Isn't he half Klingon?
No.
No?
No, wait. No, but there is some. So what happened was Worf was orphaned whenever, was it the Cardassians that attacked a base at Khitomer? The Romulans attacked a base at Khitomer. He was orphaned, and he was raised by humans on some space colony planet. So he is a full Klingon raised by humans. And what that kind of translates into for him is that he is very, I would say, stiff. He's very legalistic. Everything is very black and white. Everything is honor this and, honor that. And this is just my own take. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor or anything. So this is just my pure opinion from observation, is he feels like he's not a true Klingon. So he leans so hard into the honor and these Klingon principles, like at the point where, he gets crushed by a barrel and is crippled, and he thinks that he has to kill himself because it would be dishonorable to live as someone who couldn't walk. Whereas when we see other Klingons in the series, I'm thinking particularly of General Martok, who we see a lot of in Deep Space Nine, and who I think is an incredible character. He's a lot more flexible. Things are a lot more fungible. There's more gray area, whereas Warp is very stiff. It feels like he's reading from a manual. And I always thought that was completely fascinating because it colors his relationships. And Brian, you can jump in here anytime you want. I just don't want to just go on my long lecture about
Warp. You're good. You're good. This is good analysis. But yeah, Worf is definitely uber Klingon, kind of to his detriment. And it takes finding love, true love, for him to finally soften up a little bit, and then it gets taken away from him. But by the end of TNG, he has somehow managed to find a relationship with Deanna Troi, which is really weird because she's like soft and delicate and fragile, and he is none of those things, and yet for some reason they've managed to bond, which I thought was just kind of a dumb writer's ploy.
She completes him.
Sure.
Which
that's one way to look at it.
Kind of leads us to Deanna Troi, which I know, Jeff, you had mentioned in the last episode about her kind of like what her deal is. Like, why is she there? First 2 seasons, I think it was mostly for boobs, like, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And her character is really interesting. First of all, she's half human, half Betazoid. Betazoids are a race of aliens that are telepathic. So because Deanna's only half Betazoid, she's an empath, theoretically. And a lot of times this only translates into her stating the obvious, like when they're being bombarded with photon torpedoes and she says they sense hostility, that kind of thing. Not very helpful.
Shit, Sherlock.
But another thing, and I feel like this was part of kind of the way, I don't want to say kinder, gentler way of like bringing Star Trek into the 80s and 90s, of like putting this person, this carbon-based life form on the ship who was there for feelings, because that's literally all she does. Whereas in the original series, it was just testosterone and short skirts, like all day, every day. I think that that was an interesting premise. I also think the execution of it, they didn't know quite where they were going. And she does get a little better over the progression of the series. But at the same time, I think they refer to her as a potted plant in some instances. So, yeah.
Pretty much. She's just there responding to, or being a sounding board for other characters, more so than she is developing as her own character. Unless she was, hooking up with the alien of the week or something like that, which wasn't as often as it was for her ex-boyfriend. Wow.
Yeah.
Commander Riker, the himbo.
Let's talk about Commander Riker.
Oh, Commander Riker. Yeah, he was basically your Jim Kirk archetype. So, he was the adventurer. He always took point on away missions because they weren't allowed to send the captain down unless, it was like totally serious. So he was the adventurer, the swashbuckler, and he got it whenever he could.
And it's really interesting to kind of watch their relationship, because their romance, for the most part, until you get to the movies, happens off screen. Mm-hmm. Because in the first 2 episodes of Star Trek, it was a 2-parter encounter at Farpoint. They meet because they're both being assigned to the Enterprise, and there's clearly some history there, but they decide, we'll be friends, we'll be crewmates, we'll be colleagues, no problem. And throughout the course of this series, it's very strange because you watch Riker basically stick his dick in everything that walks by, which, dude looks good, not shaming anybody. And she kind of gives him grief about it every once in a while, but not in any meaningful way.
Right.
Whereas whenever she decides to pursue a romance, or when it looks like she might be interested in somebody else, you can always see Riker over there like kicking a wall. And he...
Typical man.
And then especially came out in the episode, was it The Child?
There's probably a few examples of that. I would say The Price is probably a good one, where Troy gets it on with like the ambassador. It wasn't an ambassador, it was like a negotiator or something like that. And she has like this big whaley weird sex scene. Like, it's kind of as sexy as TNG ever got, or I shouldn't say sexy because it didn't come off as sexy. It was just weird. Like, there was just like lots of massage oil and foot rubbing and
Well, I mean, I thought of the child in particular because of not only the way Riker's reaction. Basically, what happens in this episode is Deanna Troi gets impregnated by a space fairy, and she wakes up pregnant.
Who hasn't really?
Riker's. I mean, you know,
it happens to us all.
Yeah.
Happens. That's why recreational abortions are so much fun. You heard it here.
Wow. Garden of Doom does not endorse those comments. Those are the comments of Elle McDowell, soon to be in Portland, and hers and her alone.
Okay, so anyway, Riker gets a big bee in his bonnet because Troy's been knocked up, and this leads to one of the more interesting scenes, I think, in the series, where they're having a conference. Senior officers are having a conference over what to do about Deanna's magical fairy pregnancy, and you have Worf who's just pounding his fist saying, oh, we should get rid of it, and then them just arguing back and forth. It was Picard, Riker, Worf, I think Geordi was there. They were all arguing, and Deanna's sitting at the other end of the table, and she has no part in the conversation. And I feel like that is also one of the instances where Trek got really political, like up in your face political, and whereas before I feel like they tried to be subtle enough about it so that people like my mom wouldn't turn it off.
Did she ever say, don't you think I get a say in my own body?
She did.
She does.
She said, Picard, don't preach. I'm keeping my baby.
Oh, good. Yeah. Did she sing Madonna?
Well, she didn't sing, but that's basically what it came down to. She shut down the entire conversation. She said, listen, y'all can talk about this all day long, but the bottom line is I'm having this kid. And Picard says, all right, conversation over. So that's happening. So let's figure out what to do after that.
Do they have do they have the medical technology means to deliver and care for a space incubus fairy baby?
It was actually in the form of human. So it took the form of a human, and it was just a very accelerated pregnancy. Like 3 days later, like she's.
So it's like Zeus.
She actually looks like she's like not ready to pop.
So Zeus comes down like a swan, but it's just going to be demigod, but in the form of human. Got it. Okay, that's.
Well, and the kid grows up in like a week and turns into a fairy himself, so it kind of becomes a moot point because
no child support.
They took their stand on choice, but then it's like the actual, like, it's not like this kid's around for the rest of
the daycare, no midnight feedings.
Well, it's funny because that actually leads me back to Worf, because if we're going to talk about perhaps parents that may not necessarily be suited to be parents or planned on being parents, Worf is an interesting study because he mates with a half Klingon, half human woman named Kalar. What was it? Season 2 or 3?
Season 2.
And then she comes back a couple seasons later with Worf's son, who is kind of he's old enough to, he's young enough to not know he's probably like 4, maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah, he's a toddler at that point.
Oh, and is he annoying? I remember him.
He's annoying, but he's also smart enough to pick on the fact that his dad just doesn't know what to do with him and doesn't necessarily want him around. And then it gets extra shitty when Kalar dies and Worf has this kid that he didn't know about, probably doesn't want, and just doesn't know what to do with. So he kind of ships the kid off to his parents, and then the kid comes back. It's such a weird. I feel like that's a better kind of way of demonstrating like reluctant parenthood than just getting impregnated by a space fairy, having a kid for a week, and then having it go away.
Yeah, I mean, there's consequences down the line. Like with the whole space fairy thing, that's all compressed into one episode. You never talk about it again. whereas his relationship with Alexander is ongoing throughout the series. It even comes up in Deep Space Nine, like maybe for a couple of episodes, but it's an ongoing thing. It's not just like a one-off, here's your kid, and by the end of the episode, it's all resolved and done. It's an ongoing thing. So it's good to see that in the Worf.
And it's not even like a Wesley Crusher situation where a character, in this case, Dr. Beverly Crusher, has a child, and the child in this case, teenager, is around for a substantial part of the series, but he has his own personality. He has his own arc. He's his own character, whereas Alexander seems to only exist in relation to Worf and how Worf feels about him. Like, we don't get any, until Deep Space Nine, where it kind of shows up again as a young adult, we don't get really anything from this kid except him trying to get his dad to love him, which, jury's out whether that ever happened.
Yeah, I feel like Alexander is just kind of there to fill the cute kid quotient. So,
But he wasn't cute. He was a brat. And he
was an asshole kid for, a 6-year-old or whatever.
Like Cousin Oliver.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Thank
you
you.
Bring in the kid to try and boost ratings or whatever. So
yeah, like, to be fair, like, if I had a dad like Worf, maybe I would be like that too.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that was me as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, Worf was. I mean, listen. This is very. Obviously, I come from a distance, but to me, Worf and Data combined was just Spock.
That's a good way to put it. What do you think?
I would say parts of them combined make Spock. I'd say Worf has too much internal strife to be equated to a Vulcan.
Let me say this. Spock had struggles. He just suppressed it much better. But there were many episodes where it exploded, and he was just unbridled rage. Now, Worf was more the Klingon sort of samurai warrior culture thing was more overt and part of his day-to-day. And Data was more the Pinocchio, I want to be a real boy, day-to-day.
Yep.
But if you tone them both down a little bit, you basically got Spock.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I mean, Worf has like the stoicism, I guess, and the really rigidness to his principles, and Data has like the cold logic and still learning about humanity and how to exist as a human or among humans. So I can kind of see that.
And why did they have an Irish engineer when you had a Scottish engineer in the other? I mean, I don't dislike Chief O'Brien, and I like that he's always the Irish gang boss bad guy, or in some Western or 1920s period piece. But I mean, did you have to really not try hard, or was that the bridge to try to get old fans to watch it? Because okay, we have to have number one be like the Kirk guy and sex everyone down, and we need to have like someone with a brogue accent or a Celtic accent be on there in the.
You know what though?
Yeah.
Chief O'Brien actually had the only healthy relationship on that show.
Indeed.
He had a wife and he had a kid.
Yeah.
And
two kids eventually.
Yeah, 2 kids eventually. You're right. But Chief O'Brien is actually fully realized in a short amount of time.
Which is why he went to Friends. He went to Deep Space Nine and became friends with the guy who became the Dornish prince in Game of Thrones. Julian.
Yes. Correct. Well, also, what's interesting about why did I just blank on who we're talking about? Chief O'Brien.
Yeah.
He starts out as the transporter chief, so you only see him pushing buttons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden in one episode, there's a woman we've never heard of who he's getting married to, and then he shows up he starts kind of creeping in over time, whereas I'd say like Scotty's equivalent on TNG is Geordi LaForge, the chief engineer, the blind black guy with the cool visor so that he can see stuff. I felt like in terms of, and this is, I'd say about probably 80% of Chief O'Brien's development came on Deep Space Nine, just because A, he had more of an essential role in the series, and B, like, it seemed like an environment that was better suited to his strengths.
Oh yeah, for sure. He could like roll up his sleeves and pull apart machinery, and it was kind of like being a more frustrated Geordi, I guess. Like nothing on the station ever worked right, so he was just pretty much working round the clock. So his work was never done.
And you had mentioned, Jeff, his relationship with Julian Bashir, Dr. Bashir, and that's another kind of way of having Chief O'Brien as a fully realized character. God, I can't talk today. Is giving him friendships, giving him a marriage that is strong but not uncomplicated, and also at one point putting him and his wife in this weird, like, throuple situation with Kira Nerys on Deep Space Nine, and ostensibly that was to cover the actress's real-life pregnancy. But what basically happened is there was a transporter accident, and the fetus that Keiko O'Brien was carrying ended up inside Kira Nerys, and they had to basically have her live in their apartment until the baby was born.
Wow, that's not how women's biology works, and I'm no expert.
Well, I mean, it's Bajoran biology,
oh, okay.
And whenever you throw in some
fair enough
transporter science
and some techno babble.
Yeah, you could just start with the Bajoran. Yeah. Maybe their bodies are quicker to adapt. Maybe they're always ready to give birth.
Miles and his boyfriend Julian and his wife Keiko and their third Kira, and it was just this.
And you have Julian's. You have Julian's top, who's Garrick, and can't forget about him.
Was he the Taylor spy?
Yeah. I think we should just back up really quickly because I want to make sure that we talk about Geordi for just a second. Sure. And we didn't even mention Captain Picard.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, I was just going to say, you're talking about everyone else except for Jean-Luc, but okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially, Geordi is an interesting guy because he is clearly like super smart. He's the chief engineer. He has friendship. Like his friendship with Data, I think, is one of the most fascinating relationships because there was this one really kind of throwaway line where Riker was bored one day, so he started wandering through the ship and he saw Data painting a picture, or was it Geordi that was painting the picture? I can't remember.
Geordi was teaching Data how to paint.
And he said something like a blind man teaching an android to paint, and he like kind of like, giggled at it like it was ridiculous. But that's kind of a good summation of their relationship because they seem to, I don't want to say compensate for each other, but they seem to offer each other insight into areas of necessarily personality, but areas of just life that I'm trying to think of a good example.
It's just wholesome how they interact. Like that's the kind of friendship I would want for myself. Like I want a friend like Geordi.
Yeah, and Geordi, it's also really strange because at the same time, Geordi just is a little not great with ladies, and we see him stumble and fall a lot of times, and so just kind of having to kind of like look at that, and it's not even like he doesn't do anything that would be, how do I put this, that would raise my alarm, but there's definitely some things where like he'll blow it on a date and then he'll lament as to why it didn't work out, and he just seems kind of hapless and heartbroken the whole time, and I felt kind of bad for him.
He's like every guy I know that's under 35.
There was a time where he created a holodeck girlfriend.
Yeah, that was weird.
Like everybody wouldn't do that. I mean, what do you think everyone has Oculus
But
for?
it was a holodeck girlfriend based on a real person.
I mean, the entire purpose of virtual reality is I mean, people think it's for gaming. I mean, people get virtual reality for holodeck girlfriends.
If you show up to somebody's house and they have a holodeck version of you just hanging around, talking to them in engineer code,
it's time to go. Flee.
Stuff, and you just be like, goodbye.
Yeah, for your own safety, flee. Yeah, absolutely. And for the record, folks, I don't have an Oculus. I don't have virtual reality. I don't have a gaming system. Anybody who knows me knows that even if I did, I couldn't make it work anyhow. So, but if I could, I just might. I mean, listen, you know, first you have the people who extract the resources, and then you have the casinos and the brothels. That's just the way of history.
Fair enough.
We should talk about Picard, probably.
Probably, yeah.
He's pretty important.
Yeah, kind of. So Picard does have a few significant relationships throughout the series. Of course, the one with Dr. Crusher is probably the most significant because it's very much a will they or won't they for 7 seasons. Well, 6, really, if you discount season 2. But, yeah, their relationship is very much... Like, Dr. Crusher, she's a widow, and her husband was killed under Picard's previous command. So she's still kind of an open wound from that. But
hates his guts.
Picard kind of feels guilty, I guess, and I feel like some of that kind of I don't know, how do I word this? Picard's relationship with Dr. Crusher is kind of like, you know, I'm
it's hindered. That's a barrier for them to achieve any sort of intimacy, and by intimacy I don't mean carnal, I mean emotional. Friendly.
Yeah.
Which makes it really interesting because at least in one episode, a lot of TNG episodes are something taking over the ship so that everybody acts bonkers. And I'm thinking in particular of The Naked Now, which is the season 1 episode where everybody acts drunk, and the funniest part is Tasha Yar and Data do it, so that's hilarious. But I think Picard and Beverly get as close as they can get, while under that influence, and kind of seeing what it looks like when the guard's not up and the raw feelings. That was really interesting. And
what they do, play chess?
It's kind of like watching assuming that your parents are married and have a good relationship, it's kind of like watching your parents kiss. There's nothing really wrong with it, but it kind of squicks you out a little bit.
You, Mom and Dad, stop it.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, Dr. Crusher has her uniform zipped down to almost her cleavage, and Picard's you can see the sweat beating on Picard's head. Yeah. He's all like
Here, where's my Professor X abilities when I need them?
Right.
He also gets into this kind of on and off thing with Bash, who is basically a rebel archaeologist / person who steals artifacts and sells them to the highest bidder, which was an interesting because Picard, one of his big hobbies was archaeology, so there's obviously the connection there. But then she's an outlaw. She's the one stealing shit and selling it to people, and not always the best people for the best reasons, which actually, now that I think about it, kind of almost mirrors the Sisko Cassidy Yates relationship, because it's renegade, captain. Sisko's a little bit different, but captain meets renegade, romance ensues ? But then that also, can we talk about his relationship with Q? Because I feel
I was just going to say that because that is so homoerotic. Q has total hots for Picard, or else he wouldn't keep showing up.
Well, let's back up and tell people who Q is, because right now when you say Q, you think QAnon. So what is Q? Who is Q?
Okay, Q is awesome. Q is played by character actor John Delancey. He's basically an all-powerful demigod that loves to torture the shit out of Picard and his crew. When I say torture, I'm not talking like, thumb screws and whips and chains. More like, I'm going to send you all like 500,000 light years into a different dimension, or I'm going to put you all on the set of a Robin Hood movie or some crazy shit like that. So Q is just cool. And go ahead.
Well, at some point, also, I don't know if he necessarily would call him a chaos agent the same way that, like, someone like Garrick is. But there's a couple of significant things that Q does. First of all, he introduces the Enterprise to the Borg. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a bitch move, because the Borg is the Borg. And second of all, I'm not sure, he just kind of did it to prove to Picard that Picard wasn't shit, because there were scary things out there that Picard couldn't handle. But what he does is, and whether this was intentional or not, is he speeds up the first contact with the Borg, and also it kind of like accelerates the timeline, because the Borg's out there in a different sector of space, and it would have been years before they would have encountered humanity. But now there's this existential threat, and just because Q wanted to show off how much Picard was not good at being a captain, I guess. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of, and I understand the necessity, and I understand why, like, the Borg needed to be on the show, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, oh, come on, Q, what a bitch move.
Right.
And then he steals Picard's girlfriend, Bash. And then the one time, like, he becomes human as punishment for fucking around in the Q continuum, and then he ends up on the Enterprise, and he's actually helpful for once, and then he gets his Q powers back, and he just bounces out.
Right. Yeah, he makes Data laugh for the first time, which is pretty funny. One of the better episodes actually is where Picard is like seriously like gravely wounded, and he's having like dreams of the afterlife, and he sees Q in heaven. And it's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life situation, and Q is like Clarence, I guess, showing him what the world would be like if he made different choices. So it's actually a really good episode, but also kind of darkly funny. Like, they wake up in bed together, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, and Picard is very much, I don't say he tolerates him, but he does that thing where he tries to ignore him, but it doesn't really work. And it honestly kind of just makes it worse, because Q is persistent. Do we see Q in Deep Space Nine? I can't remember.
We do in season 1, and that's all we see of him. But Cisco punches him. Cisco has no time for his shit. So Cisco punches him, and he's like, Picard never hit me. Cisco's like, I'm not Picard.
If there's a Q, are there other letters of the alphabet out there? Like, what kind of being is Q? If he's a demigod, do we get introduced to other demigods or the gods? I mean, what?
Voyager actually introduces us to other Q, which is really interesting. Like, there's another member of the Continuum in an episode called Death Wish that wants to die. Like, he's lived a full life and wants to die and seeks asylum aboard Voyager so that he can die peacefully, which sets off a whole thing. There's another episode in season 3 of Voyager called The Q in the Gray, and we meet a female Q, played by the same actress who played Kalar, Susie Plaxton. She's John Delancey's romantic interest. She plays a very arrogant, haughty, I don't know how to describe her except badass. I love her. So that is definitely an episode worth watching, if nothing else for her performance. The rest of it's kind of like dumb Civil War drag, but the rest of it's good.
Dumb Civil War drag.
She's not the one we saw in the Valentine's Day episode where Q tries to make love to Captain Janeway,
Oh, that's
And
the same one.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm not conflating my episodes. But so it's interesting because setting up the contrast between Q and Commander Sisko, later Captain Sisko, in like the first, however long of the show is actually a really interesting way of delineating the differences between, first of all, Commander Sisko's personality, his management style, and just like his tolerance for bullshit. Because I'm gonna let you kind of explain Captain Sisko.
Oh, well, Captain Sisko, he's a very complicated man. He comes to the show, his character, his wife died in an attack from the Borg. His previous ship was destroyed. He had been toying with the idea of retiring, and he was given this assignment by Captain Picard to basically take control of Deep Space Nine and to bring Bajor into the Federation. Sisko's just very dark and complicated. He has a wonderful relationship with his son, Jake. It's just one of the more positive aspects of the show, I think, is the relationship he develops with his son, his teenage son. But he's very reserved, very quiet, but he's kind of like got this quiet strength about him. Like you can see that, just beneath the surface, there's like a volcano that's like slowly building. And if you mess with him, or if you do the wrong thing, or if you work his patience somehow, he will go off, and it won't be pretty.
So I just wanted to kind of identify a few terms that you brought up. Number one, Bajor, which is something we mentioned briefly, which is where the Bajorans live. And that was a previously occupied planet. Cardassians occupied it for 50 years. They essentially stripped it of its natural resources because it's supposed to be like a beautiful planet with lots of stuff. Like, not a bad place to live when you're not being occupied. And the Bajorans are a pretty religious people. And there's also Deep Space Nine itself was originally, for lack of a better term, a Cardassian military base outside of Bajor called Terek Nor.
It was a mining station. So all the Bajorans were enslaved there, and it was like forced labor, and all kinds of horrible stuff. So yeah, it wasn't a good situation.
So the Federation and the Bajorans kind of jointly take ownership of it and try to turn it into, it kind of reminds me of an old West situation, like where you're in the middle of this kind of gray area in terms of the law, but you're trying to build a society with rules. Mm-hmm. And it should also be mentioned that the reason why it's so important to be near Bajor is because there's a word for it, a fixed wormhole has opened up, near Bajor, which, I think you might be able to speak to more of the wormhole mumbo jumbo than I can, but that apparently is a big deal.
Yeah, and it's the reason it's such a big deal is because the Bajorans believe it was created by their gods. It's basically their quote-unquote stairway to heaven. And they believe that Captain Sisko is their emissary, their I guess, ambassador sent by the gods. So in the midst of dealing with all of his own personal trauma and trying to become a better person again, Sisko is also foisted into he has their religion foisted onto him. And it starts informing his personal life. There's a really excellent episode in season 5 called Rapture, where Sisko he's hit by a bolt of magical lightning, and suddenly he's able to see visions and all kinds of amazing stuff. And he basically he just has this great epiphany of his own and discovers the location of this lost city. It's just a beautiful episode all around. Highly recommend.
So the aliens for lack of a better term, because to them, we're the aliens, of course. But I don't know. I'm sure there's a better word to use, but I don't know it at the moment. Sort of represent different traits or eras of, I mean, most of the aliens are more or less forms of humans that we recognize or have human characteristics. Even the demigod is, sort of like Loki. He's tormenting, Thor, but he can't be without Thor. He's tormenting Picard, but
he and Loki definitely have a lot in common. That's for sure.
Well, I wanted to also kind of, if we're talking about like the alliance between the Federation and Bajor, kind of translates. It's actually played out really interestingly in Benjamin Sisko, Captain Sisko's relationship with, I guess it's his first officer, Kieran Rees, who we've mentioned before, who is a Bajoran woman who, we don't know how old she is, but based on timing, she was born and grew up during the occupation. Mm-hmm. She was essentially what some people call a terrorist, but other people would call a freedom fighter, a guerrilla. She worked with, basically she was trying to save Bajor from the inside, and she's now known as, is it Major Kira? Is she Major
Kira by the end of the series?
Yeah, she started out as Major Kira. She's the first officer, and her arc is very interesting because in addition to like her personal relationship, she's very, very religious, and kind of watching how that interacts with this very, first of all, with Ben Sisko, who's a bit of a skeptic despite being the emissary, and just kind of looking at all these people on the station who are mostly motivated by like scientific discovery or, just profit, and like, because a lot of traders come through DS9, like that kind of thing. So watching her, like her relationships, and especially her relationship with Commander Sisko is really interesting, but also with Odo.
Well, you have to tell us a little bit about Odo, because he's first of all, he was on Benson, so we have to say that. I mean, what's his name, like Rene Auberjonois or something?
Rene Auberjonois or something.
Rene Auberjonois, yeah. So he's a shapeshifter. He was the chief of security when the Cardassians ran the station, and he continues to be the chief of security while he's working under Sisko. He's not aligned with the Federation, so he doesn't share like Starfleet values or anything like that. So he's really kind of playing by his own rules, but also kind of half-assedly playing by Starfleet's rules. Not half-assedly, more like reluctantly. So he's a very complicated character in his own right. He's like a much more gruff version of Data. He's kind of understanding what it's like to live among humans, but also he's very gruff and to the point. He's not like coldly logical.
He's stiff.
He's very rigid for someone who shapeshifts.
Right. Who's someone's basically made of clay and slime.
He's goo.
Yeah, goo.
Yeah. And so the first I think 2 seasons, Odo's kind of a man apart. He doesn't know who his people are. He doesn't know even if he has a people. He was basically identified and studied in a lab by a Cardassian scientist. And then once he was able to, I guess, kind of control his abilities and become a functional life form, then he started with the security and whatever role he had on Terok Nor and then Deep Space Nine. But it gets way more interesting when we find out, because I think Odo, I don't want to say he's the most important character on the show, but like he's, I feel like, way more important than he initially appears. Mm-hmm. Simply for the fact that his people, the founders, the Dominions, are the big bad. They're the ones that they're fighting a war against for, 5 seasons?
Close to it.
Like aren't even the Borg opposed to the Dominion?
You really don't see them interact very much. The Borg don't really factor into Deep Space Nine that much.
I thought I remembered that the Borg were going to come in, and then they're like, "Nah, we'll just leave the sector. We don't care."
You might be thinking of the First Contact movie, because the Defiant shows up in First Contact, the ship, the Federation ship that gets assigned to Deep Space Nine. But the Borg really only show up in the initial premiere episode. They don't really factor in all that much into the series. The Dominion was created specifically as the big bad. So Odo's finding out that basically his entire people are trying to undermine Starfleet and all of the major alliances in the Alpha Quadrant. Like, they're undermining Klingon society, Romulan society. It's a big deal, and it's a major arc.
And then there were the Kardashians were playing both sides of the field. I know it's not the Kardashians. I just think it'd be great if you remade this series. Instead, you gave them like giant hips and booties and fake boobs and big lips instead of the arc, the big brims on their foreheads and whatever. It would just be magnificent.
Well, what I also found, interesting is that we get to see a war over a period of time versus a space battle or, a two-parter where they meet a Romulan warbird and there's a standoff and pew-pew. They're fighting an enemy, A, that they do not know little to nothing about, and B, seems to have almost bottomless resources, because one interesting thing that the founders do is they basically manufactured their own race of super soldiers called Jem'Hadar, and the Jem'Hadar are kept pliant and controllable through Ketracel White.
Drugs.
It's like a drug, and we actually see, so the Jem'Hadar are like the orcs from Lord of the Rings.
That's exactly. They're like the orcs or the clones, or like what the Anunnaki do to us by feeding us baby blood and ochre. Oh, whoops! Sorry.
Sure.
Sorry. Were you not aware that we are slaves of the overlords?
No, I was not.
Okay.
Thanks for spilling the beans.
Well, thanks for never listening to my show, or you'd know.
Okay, listen.
Open your eyes.
Well, the interesting part about the Jem'Hadar is like they're bred specifically to be warriors, to be the stormtroopers of the founders, because the founders.
Can I say something right now? Because you're exactly right, but the stormtrooper comparison is too good, because for super soldiers, they're sort of shitty soldiers. There's like a lot of them, so that they make up for it in numbers, but they're not particularly good shots. And
right.
Well, we're talking more like stormtroopers in reference to like Nazis.
Right.
Well, I'm talking like stormtroopers like Star Wars. Those guys couldn't hit an elephant 5 foot in front of them.
Yeah, well, the Jem'Hadar are much better because they're bred, they're accelerated. They're like the clones, like you in Star Wars, where you basically have, an accelerated growth time from, I guess incubation to adulthood.
Right. They're all Boba Fett's father.
Well, and they were all kind of, we do see at least one episode where some Jem'Hadar get stranded. I don't remember exactly where. I think it was on somewhere on Bajor, and they're starting to run out of Ketracel White, and you kind of see them like doing a combination of detoxing, which I imagine is not fun, having never done it, and also kind of seeing them become distinct
humanizing
beings.
They're not evil and mindless.
Personalities.
But that's one thing that Star Trek does really well. Like, they will take a faceless villain like the Borg or the Jem'Hadar, but they'll also give us some episodes that actually humanize those characters.
It's like that game.
Not to get into Voyager too much, but that's what 7 of 9 did. 7 of 9 was basically our humanized look at the Borg and what they actually are about. we get a couple of episodes like that with Jim and Dar in Deep Space Nine, where we actually get to see them as people instead of like this faceless, what's the word I want? Faceless enemy. We actually have to take a cold, hard look at them. And
mindless killing machines. Yeah, it's like that episode of Game of Thrones where Arya Stark encounters Ed Sheeran's little group of Lannister soldiers, eating rabbits in the woods, and it turns out that they're all like little farm boys and fighting the rich man's war, and and they share their meal with her, and they let her eat it first because guests first. And my mom always taught me to be kind to guests, strangers, so strangers will be kind to me, and all of that. So yeah, it was all of that blah 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 blah. And then the next episode, kill everyone. So.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about humanizing villains, because one villain in Deep Space Nine that is, I don't know if he would even attempt to humanize him, but put him in situations where there's nuance, and that's Gul Dukat, who is basically, he's the worst. The thing is like he's charming. He's, he has a presence. Like, he could make you like him if you didn't know he was like a genocidal megalomaniac.
Is he the Cardassian, like sort of the leader?
Cardassian.
Yeah,
one of the leaders.
He's the Machiavelli. He was my favorite character, probably no surprise, besides Sisko.
So, and this is one thing that Brian and I talked about that both like really gets on our nerves is you know about shipping, right?
Sure.
Jeff?
Shipping? Like UPS,
shipping
like logistics?
Together.
Oh no! Tell me in this context what shipping is.
In fan fiction, there's a term called shipping where you basically place characters together in romantic or sexual situations. Basically, there's like the one true pairing. It's what it is, like Kirk and Spock or whoever. Not a lot, but there had been this kind of movement. I don't know if it was while the show was airing to ship, or if it was just a fan thing, to ship Kira Nerys and Gul Dukat together, which, it would be the whole like, rebel, bad boy, and then, they used to be enemies, but now they're lovers. And I am like 1000% let your freak flag fly. But given the fact that Gul Dukat, like, A, raped her mother, and B, like, was one of the people very powerful in a genocide of her people, like, that's not sexy. Sorry.
It's a bridge too far.
And the actress Nana Visitor, who played Kira Nerys, even said, it's disgusting, don't ship those characters, here's why. And people still do it. So if you're out there and you're shipping Kira and Gul Dukat, please don't.
Yeah, stop it. Just stop it right now.
And my panel here, for a small fee, will vet your shipping decisions for you. So subscribe to Elle and Brian vetshipping.com, $5 a month, or $7.99 per decision.
Use promo code Macaron and get your first month free.
Right. And Garden of Doom and give your first month's wage to me.
I know that we probably don't want to keep talking forever, but we just need to mention another couple characters in Deep Space Nine who are really great, which is Dax, Jadzia Dax, later Ezri Dax, who is a Trill. A Trill is a symbiont where basically an ankylosaur is implanted in a human body, and they kind of become one. And the symbiont, the Dax symbiont, has been, by the time he gets to Jadzia, she is his 7th or 8th host. I think she's the 7th, but yeah. Yep. So this symbiont has all the memories and experiences of 7 lifetimes, but he's also incorporating himself into the brain of, like, a young woman. And what also makes Dax interesting is that Dax's former host, Curzon Dax, was a mentor of Benjamin Sisko's. So it's kind of, you know, the teacher becomes the pupil situation, because he's Dax's, or Sisko's Dax's superior, but at the same time, he's interacting with at least part of someone who he used to see as an authority figure and a role model.
Yeah, it's sort of like if Yoda. It's sort of like if Yoda was implanted into Finn, and Luke was talking to Finn, but would say, "Hello, old friend. Nice to talk to you again, old friend," and it wouldn't make any sense. Old Luke, you know.
This would be more like if Yoda's brain had been implanted into, say, Carrie Fisher.
Well, young Carrie Fisher, because Carrie Fisher's the same age as Mark Hamill, but
what's funny
did you say Cindy Crawford?
I'm sorry?
Did you say Cindy Crawford?
I did.
No. Oh.
We need to.
stand by it.
We need to find someone younger. We need to find more current.
It's really high.
Yeah, she was a very attractive woman. You're right. She looked like a supermodel, whoever the actress was. But we're talking about people who are now in their 50s to an audience that's probably your age, you know, or younger.
But the funny thing about it was that Curzon was like a womanizer and a drunk, basically, and you're putting like the dirty old man in the body of a beautiful young woman. So like Sisko's having to look at like his old drinking buddy now as his new science officer. So he's like trying to reconcile all of that in his head. And then also Curzon was like a big deal among the Klingons. Curzon had helped negotiate the peace accords that brought the Klingons into the Federation. So Worf finds out about this and develops the hots for Jadzia, and they eventually get married. So, and then she dies.
Spoiler alert, she gets tasered by somebody, and you have to watch the show to find out too.
Well, spoiler alert, the show ended like two and a half decades ago, so it's okay.
Okay, it was Gul Dukat. Fine. Yeah. And I mean, and also, who else are we? Well, we just want to talk like briefly about Julian Bashir, who's the doctor on Deep Space Nine. He was like a wunderkind, like, you know, by the age of 30, he was getting nominated for incredible awards. Like, he was second in his class at Starfleet Medical, and he's just this decorated, you know, kind of set up for success guy, very handsome, but he starts off the series by just being kind of an asshole and like being shitty to women and being very unlikable. But he actually really grows into an interesting character because he starts to develop layers. He gets a bit of a backstory. His friendships with Chief O'Brien and with Garrick are very interesting. What?
And Jadzia. Yeah, like he starts off like obsessively hitting on Jadzia, and Jadzia is like, "Oh, this is cute, but you know, I'm like 700 years too old for him." So she tolerates it. I don't know why she tolerated it for so long. Like, I would have called HR after like 2 episodes. Like, y'all.
Yeah, but she's dealt with 7 lifetimes of people probably worse than him, if possible, that there are people worse than him. So she does this, like, she has this really patient way about her, but she's also, like, no bullshit. So I really liked Terry Farrell as Dax. And are we missing anybody else in Ops? Because I'm trying to remember if Oh, we need to talk about the Ferengi just real quick.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, Quark and Rom and Nog.
So we meet the Ferengi initially in the first season of TNG, and they're kind of introduced as basically just a fucking joke. Like, they're short, they look like scary monsters, they have sharp teeth and big ears, and they have these, they're basically like space bad guys, but like not as formidable as like the Romulans or something. they're motivated by profit. Their whole society is based on like capitalism on steroids, and we see them every once in a while during TNG, where like, you know, there was one time where somebody claimed Captain Picard killed his son, so we had to get revenge, that kind of thing. Not a lot of nuance. But we meet three interesting Ferengi in Deep Space Nine. There's Quark, who is a bartender, bar owner. There's his brother, Rom, who is initially, he works at the bar under his brother and is just kind of a pushover. And then there's, yeah, but I forget, like, we can talk about that in a minute, but like, and then there's Nog, who is Rom's son and Jake Sisko's best friend.
Did you know that Ferengi, before we move on to that, is actually a real word?
What?
Ferengi is a real word. It's a.
What does it mean?
Ferengi is the Arabic word for European traders.
Oh.
Yeah, so it dates back to before the Crusade. So it was not an accident that they called them that. So a little something that I stumbled upon accidentally when I read a novel, and I'm like, wait, Ferengi? So yeah, it was basically foreign traders, which in the context basically was primarily European. Though I suppose it could have been. I mean, if you look it up, it's about European traders. It's not like about from the further east or India or Asia or whatever. But that's kind of interesting.
Okay.
I do have a question for you guys, because there's these other shows out there. There's Picard, there's Discovery, there's Enterprise. Like, is there some way, like in like maybe like 90 seconds each, to tell us what we need to know about those shows? And then I've got a question about the, like, sort of the reboot of the movies and what you think of that, and if they just gave up because the last movie stunk.
Discovery is initially set prior to the original series. How do I even encapsulate Discovery? Yeah, it's... Elizabeth, are you watching Discovery? How do you feel about it?
So I didn't want to watch Discovery until I finished watching Voyager, which I have not finished yet. So I am no expert on Discovery.
Let me give it a try, because it's coming as the outsider, but casual. When I came into it, it was very confusing, so I had to figure things out, because it actually occurs before the original series, Star Trek, the original series. But I think after Enterprise, that part I'm not sure about. But the reason it's so disconcerting is because, you know, the graphics and the special effects and everything is so superior to a show made in 2020 than in 1969 that it's hard to figure out. But basically, Discovery, I mean, the main characters are sort of a reverse Spock. You have a human woman raised by, ironically, Spock's parents in Vulcan and being raised as a Vulcan, who is a Starfleet officer who's got sort of that Vulcan code, but also struggles with her humanity. Not as much as Spock, because, you know, her mother taught her to embrace it. But she's sort of a disgraced officer because she basically stumbled upon a Klingon artifact and led to the death on like their holy shrine, which led to the lighting of the some giant mega structure that told the Klingon Empire for the 24 houses to all unite, and it's time to go to war. And basically she, you know, not intending to, but out of curiosity, sort of killed the cat. The other character...
Yeah. No, that's a good summation of the first season. My problem with Discovery is that it's never the same thing every season. Like, there's just... I can't even summarize it for you, to be honest. I mean, the characters, I guess, are interesting, but I feel like for all of the great representation that we do get, I still feel like it's really ham-fisted. Like, I mean, there's a gay couple on the ship, like, they're openly gay, like, that's not even a thing anymore, which is great, don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like we really explore who these people are as characters and see them grow as people. It's just like, okay, well, we have gay characters, we have disabled characters, we have non-binary characters now, and it's all about, you know, let's talk about their quirks and make them weird and lovable, but let's not let them grow any.
But we have Michelle Yao.
It's very frustrating.
We have Michelle Yao, who wherever she is, she's always playing the same character. So.
Oh, Michelle Yao is awesome, though. I do love seeing Michelle Yao on Star Trek. As the show goes on, we get to know the mirror universe version of Captain Georgiou, and she's actually really ruthless
and Jason
kind of lovably ruthless.
And Jason Isaacs, who by the way I think is one of my top 3 candidates who should play Dr. Doom, along with Sean Bean and Michael Fassbender. But Jason Isaacs, as it turns out, the captain who gets them the warp drive in this timeline, which is, it's a weird thing of like some sort of space spice or space bacteria that like these giant spacefaring tardigrades can harness, and that's how they come upon warp. Turns out he's actually the evil version of himself from the other universe, and that's why he's so ruthless and effective in battling the Klingons and gets through. So he's sort of a hero, but he's an anti-hero. And we find out about it because he's like sensitive to light or something like that. And in the other universe, the bad people don't have light. It's like eternal darkness or something.
Yeah, it gets really convoluted. So my jury is still out on Discovery. I want to like it so much because it's Star Trek, but I feel like the fact that the format is so different in that a season is like maybe 12 or 13 episodes, it doesn't get room to breathe. Like you don't get like a Captain Burnham episode and then a Saru episode and then, an episode about, one of the minor characters. It's all just one plot from beginning to end. And if you miss an episode, you're like, what the hell happened and why are we here?
Yeah. The only takeaway I think that might be important from it is that we learned that there's 24 Klingon houses, and that they are not always uniform, and in fact, they're usually not, and that there's huge religious stratifications and a caste system. And I think aside from that, which probably was explored in some extent in other Star Trek properties, that's probably the only thing you need to know. I mean, if you were curious how they got warp technology, this is probably not the way that you thought it came about. Okay, so what about Enterprise, which was that show with Scott Bakula, which I don't think lasted very long, but I think took place before the original series as well, but I'm not sure if it was before Discovery or not, but I think it was. I think it was still just like impulse speeds.
Yeah, basically Enterprise it's set like way before the original series. It's basically like the first warp-capable starship that's launched into space. And Captain Jonathan Archer, played by Scott Bakula, gets to leave his crew in exploring space, I guess, for the first time.
So it's after Discovery, then?
It's before Discovery. Like Enterprise is like a prototype starship.
Okay. So yeah. One of these shows is not canon, at least or they figured that people forgot about warp.
Basically. It's after first contact with the Vulcans. His first officer, T'Pol, is a Vulcan. So he's kind of dealing with his own internalized racism against Vulcans because he feels like Vulcans have been holding society back. And T'Pol is there basically as a liaison to the Vulcan government to make sure that they don't fuck up. So
to hold them back.
Yeah, basically. So it's about them learning to work together, and then they're dealing with Klingons for the first time. They meet Andorians for the first time. There's a whole arc in like the third season where it's kind of like 24 in space, where they're like an alien race has come and destroyed a part of Earth, and they're trying to find where this race lives and give them hell back. So it's kind of like 9/11 in space, I guess, mixed with a bit of 24.
Well, first we need to tell them the Andorians are the blue people with Captain Kangaroo haircuts and blue mushroom antennae. I think that's very important that people know that.
Yes. Andorians are kind of awesome, actually. They're kind of like Klingons. They're very warlike. They're very easily offended. Jeffrey Combs played the best one, Shran.
Well, they look like Smurfs.
Yeah, Jeffrey Combs is amazing. He's a mainstay on Deep Space Nine. He's a mainstay on Enterprise. He shows up like maybe once in Voyager. He's just an amazing actor. But yeah, Enterprise only lasted for 4 seasons. It was, I think by that point, Star Trek had just really saturated the market for probably a good 20 years or so by that point. Like, from like 1987 to 2003, you can almost always count on a new episode of Star Trek every week. And by that point, the formula was just stale, and no one was really watching anymore. It wasn't bringing anything new to the table. So,
Picard. What about Picard? I think, is that still on?
Season 2 is coming actually next month. Oddly enough, they are bringing Q back as the main antagonist for the 2nd season. But basically, it's about Picard dealing with life after retirement, which is pretty interesting, actually. I mean, it's well-meaning. I feel like some of the execution isn't the greatest, but it's a lot of it has to do with Picard seeing Earth is like less rosy than he thought it was, and the ideals of the Federation maybe not always lining up with his own worldview. There's not like an overreaching plot that I can just explain easily. Romulus has been destroyed, and Romulans are kind of like being resettled and rehomed elsewhere. Picard was primary to that effort. So
which one, the destruction or the repopulation?
I'm sorry?
Which one, the destruction or the resettling of the diaspora?
The resettling. Like, he had tried to warn Romulus ahead of time that, environmental conditions are not great and y'all need to do something about it, and they didn't listen, and their whole world was destroyed.
So it's not like from attacking all sorts of planets that somebody else destroyed them. They destroyed themselves.
Basically, yes.
Like we're doing right now.
So pretty much, it's pretty topical. But
Garden of Doom.
It's basically about.
This is not the Garden of Light. This is not the Garden of Flowers. This is not the Garden of Happiness. It's the Garden of Doom.
Exactly, and I feel like it would fit in really well with that.
Thank you.
So I definitely recommend at least giving it a watch. You do get to see some characters from the original run. You get to see Troy and Riker. Data plays a major part in the series because it also involves Data's offspring and trying to.
What?
Data creates children.
How?
With a hammer and nails. Well, no, with a soldering iron and screws and motherboards.
So he Geppetto'd his own. So it's not like he's got Data parts that he was able to, actually have a semi-biological child. He constructed one like himself.
Well, if Tasha Yar had lived long enough, we might have known. But no, he actually does construct his own.
Maybe with the help of that fairy baby that was floating around in space.
It's a weird, complicated watch, but I highly recommend it. The special effects, the music is amazing, if nothing else. I feel like the score is just beautiful.
That is a really bad sell to watch a TV show. Is the score? The music's good.
Just do it once. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Lower Decks is another amazing series I highly recommend. It's animated Star Trek. Very funny. It's all about ensigns serving on the USS Cerritos, and they specialize in second contact. They actually go to planets where first contact has already happened, and they go to make sure all the paperwork is filled out correctly. They make sure we have the names of all the restaurants and the names of all the ambassadors. It's funny. I recommend it.
Actually, that's important. I mean, maybe it's not supposed to be. Maybe it's supposed to be like Downton Abbey, but you have to have the people who follow up. I mean, they're the ones that. I mean, there's job one and there's job two. They're doing job two.
Exactly, and you get to see them behind the scenes, like they're power washing shuttlecrafts and cleaning up the holodecks and emptying out the trash and all this stuff. So it's funny stuff. Highly recommend.
Sounds good. All right, now tell me about the cinematic universe, and if you want to start with the old one, that's fine, or if you just want to jump to the reboot, that's fine too, but like, what's important that we have to see, what's not, what carries over?
Can I just quick interject? Can we take a bathroom break if this is going to be a minute? I don't know how long this is going to be, but I have to pee.
That was sexy. Yeah, I can put this on pause. Okay, are we moving? I think we are out of pause now. Yep, we're going. So
cool. Yay. Alright. Well, as far as movies go, I feel like Wrath of Khan is essential viewing. Like, every Star Trek fan, even, a curious Star Trek fan, a casual Star Trek fan, needs to be familiar with Wrath of Khan. That is absolutely one of my favorite all-time movies. Like, I can probably quote it verbatim. So good.
I can too. Listen.
So,
Khan!
So, fun fact that casual Star Trek tourists do not know is that Wrath of Khan was actually a continuation of a TOS episode called Space Seed, where we meet a younger Khan and his friends, and that's how they end up on that planet.
Yep.
So you got to go back and watch the TOS episode to get the full context for Wrath of Khan, in my opinion.
No, you're right.
I think even not knowing that context, though, you can still get a lot out of that movie.
Well, these folks were in a space ark, and then Kirk found them this planet, but apparently no one ever came. Nobody did what the people in the lower decks did. Nobody went to check on them. Nobody paid attention. Nobody made sure it was okay. And apparently the planet became like completely unlivable, and like everyone died except for Khan and like 20 others. So that's why he has wrath, because he was sort of first the Federation was the savior, but then they sort of abandoned them.
No, that's fair. He had some good reasons to be mad, I guess. But that movie just completely hinges on the chemistry between William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, first of all, but also William Shatner and Ricardo Montalban. And which is funny because they were never actually in the same room when they were filming. Like, William Shatner and Ricardo Montalban filmed all of their scenes separately, so they never actually interacted with each other. But the chemistry that they built, so good.
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Or the one.
Which is the exact opposite of modern times, which is that my feelings are hurt. Never mind, sorry.
Well, I mean,
I don't feel safe.
Yeah, I won't go there, but
probably not.
Yeah.
Grumpy old man shaking fisticuffs. Got it.
Do you want to see a picture of my cat?
No.
Elizabeth, what's your favorite Trek movie? I don't think we've ever talked about that.
Please don't be angry with me, but I don't think that I have one. Mostly because, how do I put this? I didn't spend enough time with the movies to, I guess, integrate them into my psyche, and I've only seen them once or twice, and it's been a minute, so I really couldn't say. Wrath of Khan, of course, is great, but I do like, what was the one with the Borg Queen, where J.L. Pipes had to fight the Borg Queen?
Oh, First Contact.
Yeah, that was a good one. I did like that one. Also, for anyone out there, I am terrible with titles of things, but I remember, what's in the episode. So between me and Brian, we will be able to sufficiently describe everything that happens.
Oh, yeah, give me, 5 scenes, and I'll know what you're talking about.
Well I said this.
The one where the guy did the thing. And,
yeah, that one.
The first Star Trek movie, which I think was Star Trek: The Motion Picture, is a really interesting concept, but it was really long. It was like Stanley Kubrickian, and it didn't help it any. But it's an interesting movie, and it's worth watching. In my opinion, Wrath of Khan is the best Star Trek movie. The third one, The Search for Spock, is good, but it's a little bit cutesy with the whales and stuff.
That's not the one with the whales, is it?
4 is the one with the whales.
Yeah.
So which
it's
is
called Star Trek 4, the one with the whales.
Oh, that's a good name.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
So which is The Search for Spock? What happened in that one? No whales?
That's the one where they end up on the planet, and Spock gets resurrected, and he has to go through growing up on the planet.
The Genesis thing, reincarnated.
Enterprise to go save Spock.
Yeah.
Okay, so no
The
whales.
one with the whales is the one where they go to San Francisco in the 80s, and there are whales.
That's on you.
Yeah. Thanks, friend.
Right. So obviously I've confused the two movies, so they must have not made that much impact on me. I thought that the reboot, the first one, was pretty good. I mean, the casting was amazing. The tone, the relationships between them was great. I think they got that all right. Parts of it weren't, you know, you can nitpick with everything, but overall I thought that was a good movie and certainly the best of the new ones. Unfortunately, the third one was really, really bad. And since the second one was only okay, which was a sort of like a reboot of Khan, the third one needed to be really solidly good to keep that franchise going. But I guess all those guys are aging anyway, so it's probably ripe for another reboot.
I like theatrical Trek when it only happens like every so often. I don't need a new Trek movie every 3 years. I feel like they don't need to keep returning to that well if they're not going to bring new things to the table.
They're not going to.
So
I
will say that I actually watched the rebooted modern quote unquote Star Trek before I started watching TNG. So that was actually my first experience with Star Trek. So must have done something right, because the friend I was seeing it with started explaining Vulcans to me in the theater because I didn't know what they were. But it began this wonderful relationship with Trek, which is why I'm here today.
And that's great that rebooted Star Trek does that. If nothing else, even if it's not for folks who necessarily grew up on it, like people seeing it fresh for the first time, they may discover TNG out of nowhere, or stay at home one day and find Voyager on their Netflix queue before it gets taken off. But just to build their own relationships with the characters, because I think kind of tying this up neatly, we all see what we want to see in Star Trek and find things that we can identify with. And I think that's what keeps us coming back, is just being able to see ourselves in it.
Star Trek the musical with the Kardashians and Kylie Jenner. So there we go. I think I have a hit there.
Yeah. Hard no on that.
Yeah, I've already tried Diana the musical, and no thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Star Trek made it through every single iteration of itself, movies, series, everything, without a single musical episode. And so I think that, there's music, there's obviously there's Seven and the Doctor, and there's, Data playing his violin, but there are no fucking musicals, thank God.
No fucking musicals. That's if I had any balls, that's what I would name this episode, but I won't. All right, so I think we've tied this up very nicely. You guys, when you've seen Babylon 5 and/or Battlestar Galactica and/or The Expanse, get back to me and we'll convene on that again. Elle, good luck in your move. I didn't know, but that's cool. It doesn't come as a big surprise because I know that you got peeps there. So cool. And Brian, enjoy the big skies and the big ribs and everything big in Texas.
Well, thank you.
All right, people. Thank you.
All right, it's so nice to be here. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff.
And thank you guys all for tuning into Garden of Doom. Oh, promote your stuff again before we go off.
Murder, She Woke. You can find it anywhere you get podcasts. So if you really enjoy hearing me talk, then you can hear me talk more.
On the other hand, if you would prefer that I spoke less, you can go look at The Obsessive Macaronist on Instagram, at The Obsessive Macaronist. I'm also at Brian Moss 3 on Twitter, where I very, very occasionally have witty things to say. So,
excellent. For the uninitiated, maybe you should tell us what a macaron is.
A macaron is a bitchy French cookie that took me a month to learn how to make, but once you do it, it's really pretty.
Do you name any of them after that?
Even if you don't like cookies, go to the page just to look at how magnificent they are.
Pretty much.
What's the name of that Cardassian that's evil?
Goldicott.
Yeah, that sounds French. You should name one of your macarons the Goldicott. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning into Garden of Dew. Hope you come back next time. Stay evil, my friends.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.